Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 go.
With the 77th pick in the 2014 NFL Draft, the San Francisco 49ers select Chris Borland, linebacker, Wisconsin.
That is such a Trent Baalke, Jim Harbaugh selection.
Thank you for joining me.
Absolutely.
Hopefully, the first of many, hopefully. Yeah, so what I want to talk about before we get into the podcast aspect is talking about how you became Chris Borland, your journey from a Dayton kid into Wisconsin to the 49ers and then life after.
Yeah. Well, I can just jump in and if you'd like.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Kettering. Grew up in a big Irish Catholic family. So I'm the sixth of seven kids. My sister's the oldest, and then there's six boys. So sports were always huge in our family. My dad played college football at Miami University. And all of my older siblings played in high school and college, and one had a cup of coffee in pro soccer. So, as a kid, I grew up obsessed with sports. I was a huge Green Bay Packers fan, like every kid in the early 90s, mid 90s, loved the Chicago Bulls, UD basketball, and then really high school too. Watching my siblings compete was a thrill. My oldest brother lettered in 7 different sports. My next brother won a state championship for Alter in 1999. Next brother won a national championship in soccer. And so I grew up kind of idolizing not only people like Brett Favre and Michael Jordan, but my older siblings and star athletes at Alter, like the Wallaskowskis or Bobby Getty. So I knew when I was young that I wanted to be a pro athlete. I think that's a fairly common dream, but one I really had since as long as I can remember. I played every sport under the sun growing up. My parents were really good about, with all of us, letting us try out things and pursue our passions. Despite being a college football player, my dad never pushed us into football. In fact, he had all of his sons wait until high school to play tackle football. And I think that was really beneficial for me in developing athleticism. I don't think very highly of youth football. I think it's basically, whichever kid hits puberty first runs around or runs everybody over. And football is a game that requires a lot of explosiveness and power and strength, and you simply don't have that as a young person. So I really benefited from playing a lot of soccer, some baseball, basketball, tennis, swimming, and diving, and then neighborhood games. I grew up right by St. Albert's Elementary School. So St. Albert's was on one end of our street, and on the other end was a vacant lot. And my neighborhood was full of families that were a lot of boys my age or slightly older that were great athletes, from the Hilgermans to the Munns to the Mantikas and Eastmans and Shaboos. There was, and many more. There were literally dozens of families with multiple boys just slightly older than me. So kind of like a utopia for a young athlete. And you never had to plan really to play pickup. There was, a game constantly going on at either St. Albert's or in the lot, whether it be basketball or football or wiffle ball, kickball, tag, whatever. So I grew up really immersed in sports, in a competitive family. And so when it came time, I played a lot of different sports, but when I went to Alter, that was the first year my dad let me play tackle football. And having grown up loving playing backyard football, I actually kind of hated putting on, a helmet and pads. It felt awkward. I didn't even know where the, girdle pads were supposed to go. I can remember my first, 10 minutes at practice at Alter thinking like, I don't like this. But I adjusted and wound up having a ton of fun my freshman year. And by the end of that season, thought like, this is what I want to do. I want to focus on football. Still played basketball for 2 more years and played tennis and then ran track and threw shot put and discus. But by my junior year, I knew I wanted to try to get a scholarship for football. This is my dog, Bruce. So I think that's kind of when things changed for me and went from sports as a passion or an extracurricular activity to something that required a more robust commitment. So I'd be lifting weights for 2 hours a day, 4 days a week, and really focusing on gaining weight and learning how to be a good football player with the hopes of getting a scholarship.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So yeah, you talked about growing up in a very competitive family, and I grew up with 3 older brothers who were my biggest fans, but also my biggest critics. And to see the success of your siblings and your dad and your grandpa going to play football at Wisconsin, your dream school. My question is like, how did you react when your parents or your siblings would say, "Oh, you're not very good at this or very good at that"? Because, like I said, they're my biggest fans, but also my biggest critics, and so.
Yeah. It's a good question. I was really fortunate. I don't, when I say I came from an athletic family or we were very competitive, I think there's an assumption that it was unhealthy. And I think it was the opposite. I got a lot of encouragement from my siblings. They helped me train. There was a healthy competition amongst us. And, my parents' role probably wasn't pushing us into sports or being demanding. It was probably reining us in. We were so obsessed and played so hard and trained so hard that I think their role and that they did well was to help us keep perspective. It's just a game. It matters more what type of person you are, what type of student you are. And I think, I witness it a lot these days with kind of the professionalization of youth sports, with lots of parents living vicariously through their kids. My parents weren't like that at all. It's not common to play football and then tennis. And coaches at Alter thought like, "What are you doing?" And my dad said, "Go for it, enjoy it. You only get so much time to play, and you're not a professional." So I'm grateful for their approach. I think they were very wise in how they kept sports in their proper perspective. And also, I mentioned it, in my opening remarks, but letting us pursue what we wanted. I had brothers play college basketball, college soccer. One was a cheerleader. My sister was a dancer. People thought I was crazy when I quit soccer to play football because I was a good soccer player, but it's what I wanted to do. So I never really had any parental or sibling stress. I always felt really supported and encouraged.
Yeah. Going back to the football aspect, you said you didn't play football until your 9th grade. Were you involved in like flag football or anything like that, or just like the neighborhood football games?
Just the neighborhood games. There wasn't organized flag leagues when I was growing up, and the neighborhood games were tremendous competition. I really lucked out. I was one of the younger kids in the neighborhood. All of the older kids were good athletes, but I could hang. So I got great competition. And, by the time I played my first year of organized football, I felt like it was easier than the backyard games that I'd played for 8 or 9 years.
Mm-hmm. And then going into alter, you were a running back, and in the NFL, you're a linebacker. So how was your transition to that from running back to linebacker?
In high school football, if you're one of the better athletes, the coaches try to get the ball in your hands, and it's similar to kind of late bloomers in basketball, guys that grow 5 or 6 inches in high school. So they have guards skill set, and they wind up playing a big man position like late in high school or in college. I had kind of a running back's skill set in terms good footwork, good vision, speed, cutting ability. That when I did transition to linebacker at Wisconsin, I felt more athletic than my peers that have been playing linebacker since they were 8 years old. That's not to say it was a smooth transition. When I got to Wisconsin, it was really my first time playing linebacker, and I was recruited as an athlete. At times, Alter would kind of throw me in on defense, but I didn't know the playbook, and the coaching point was to find the ball or guard a certain player.
Before you say anything, my first memory of you is when you jumped over the line.
Good coverage on the receiver.
Somersault. It went viral on YouTube.
3rd and 1 or 2. Here's a handoff, and what a defensive play. That play is going to wind up short. Who was it? That was Borland that dove headlong over the Fairmont offensive line to make the tackle.
And I don't know what went into that.
Chris Borland with a diving tackle. He just hurdled.
I was young. I had 100,000 views, and it was on a show that Best Damn Sports Show period that I don't think it's on anymore, but it was kind of neat to see something you did on the field in high school, be exposed to the nation. But my transition to linebacker came at the college level, and there was a steep learning curve. The playbook, all of the techniques you use as a linebacker. I always had a unique and bizarre stance. I'd get really low and bend my knees a lot and have a wide base, which is kind of uncommon, but it's how I felt comfortable. And my coaches were very patient with me. I was committing like a cardinal sin of technique every day when I was, a true freshman at Wisconsin for the first few months. And they found ways to get me involved where I could contribute as a true freshman while I was still learning how to play the position. So I was played on 3rd down. I was a pass rusher. I played on all the special teams, and that kind of gave me time to learn how to be an every down linebacker. And I wound up our starter at weak side linebacker got injured about the 6th game of the season, and I stepped in and started the rest of the year. Was still raw, but had made dramatic improvement from when I showed up on campus. I wound up having a lot of success. I was BigTen Freshman of the Year. I was a freshman All-American, and a good team. We won 10 games and beat Miami in our bowl game. So that first year at Wisconsin was kind of storybook for me. From going from a lightly recruited kid that had never played the position to 6 months later, being considered one of the best young linebackers in the country. So really exciting. I was living my dream. Wisconsin was my dream school, and had success right off the bat.
Then going into your sophomore season, you sustained a shoulder injury. And so did you ever feel like you never become back to normal, become that BigTen Freshman of the Year again? Or what was your mindset going into that injury?
Well, I was playing my entire freshman year with a torn labrum in my left shoulder. So as the injury got worse, and there was a considerable amount of pain. I'd never had an orthopedic surgery before. And by the end of the year, I had it imaged, and the coaches and athletic training staff and doctors said after the season, you'll need a surgery, which firstly kind of opened my eyes to how serious big time sports are. They were so, it's routine for them. Like, hey, season's over, you'll get a surgery, you'll be back. And for me, it was a pretty dramatic experience. So I had that shoulder operated on in early January after my freshman football season at Wisconsin, and spent about 6 months rehabbing and recovering. And I was slated to start as a true sophomore. I was on a lot of watch lists for the best linebacker in the country and best defensive player in the country, preseason all Big Ten selection. And our season opener, my sophomore year, I injured that same shoulder, and I thought I'd re-aggravated the labral tear, which would have been trouble. That's if you have 2 bad tears in your labrum, sometimes that can end your career. So I rehabbed it. I missed our second game, and they put me back in for the third game against Arizona State. And I lasted less than 1 series. I made a couple tackles, and on the second tackle, badly dislocated my shoulder in a way that felt different than how it would dislocate my freshman season. They decided to kind of send me to specialists because they thought I had torn my labrum twice, and it shouldn't be that painful or you experience that dramatic of a dislocation. So to Wisconsin's credit, and again, my surprise at how serious, big time sports can be, they sent me to James Andrews, who's one of the best orthopedic sports doctors in the country. And they sent me to a shoulder specialist at the University of Pittsburgh. And I decided to have my second left shoulder surgery done at Pittsburgh. And what they found, whenever you have 2 operations on your shoulder, the second one has to be open, meaning rather than an arthroscopic repair, they make a large incision, open up your shoulder joint because they want to find out what went wrong. And they found that I actually broke a bone in my shoulder. So my labrum was intact. I didn't re-aggravate an old injury. It was a new injury. So the doctor put in a couple of 3 screws, and it is dramatic or hard, but it's actually good news because bones heal better than labral tears. And I was pleased to hear that. I learned that was actually good news. I still had concerns that whether I'd be able to play football ever again. That's 2 serious operations in 10 months. And they actually, so I took a medical red shirt my sophomore year, and I had a similar labral tear in my right shoulder. So they imaged it and said, well, since you're going to be out the season, you might as well have that one done too. And so in December, I had an orthoscopic surgery on my right shoulder, which in hindsight, I don't think I would have had that operation done. But that was the first time in my athletic life that I thought I might be done as an athlete. 3 major surgeries in less than a year. And to put a silver lining on it, what that 2010 caused me to step back and be a little less obsessed with football and explore some other things in school and life. And I think I probably grew a lot that year, but it was very difficult. And I didn't know if I'd ever be able to play again. But my red shirt sophomore year, I switched to middle linebacker. I basically hadn't played football in 18 months, but wound up starting at middle linebacker. I didn't miss a single snap that season, and was a 3rd-team All-American and first-team Big Ten. So I rebounded. I went from thinking I'd never play again to being back on the NFL track. And I think my senior year at Alter, we went undefeated, won a state championship. My freshman year at Wisconsin, we won 10 games and I had personal success. My sophomore year was a real setback. And it was the first time I'd had a pretty charmed athletic life. It was the first time I experienced real adversity, and also came in contact with the significant mental, physical commitment that high-level sports are, and kind of the industry behind high-level sports. Because until then, even though I worked very hard, I was playing and having fun and didn't really have huge problems. And 2010, I think, changed that.
Yeah. One of my questions is also, like, when I played basketball, I was always hard on myself. And it was always basketball this, basketball that, always basketball. And then when I ended up going to the hospital and I had to focus on my health, then when I got the chance to play basketball again, I was just grateful I got the chance to play again. My mindset switched and I became, I would say, a better basketball player. And it sounds like it happened the same to you, where you had the mindset of football everything, and then you were hit with this injury, and then you found that football is not everything, to be grateful while you play and go along with that.
Yeah, I think it provides some valuable perspective, and then really simply just the joy of playing when you're young and that's what you've known all your life and you love it. To have it taken from you is difficult. And not that I wasn't driven or hard on myself anymore, but it just felt good my redshirt sophomore year to get back on the field and play. It took time to get used to. I was still fearful that my shoulder would get injured again, but I kind of got over that hump, and then it just became fun again. Playing at a really high level on a Rose Bowl team. I think it was a valuable perspective, but a hard-earned lesson.
And then you went on to become a third-round draft pick for the San Francisco 49ers. Tell me about the process transitioning from college to football. And you talked about leaving your junior year and decided to stay one more year, and then you became a very sought-after recruit from Wisconsin.
Yeah, we won back-to-back Big Ten championships. And so after my junior year, after we beat Nebraska in the Big Ten championship, the next morning our coach told the team he was leaving Wisconsin to go to Arkansas. And I was draft eligible. I was pretty close to graduating early, and considered leaving for the pros. It's such being a pro athlete or getting drafted is the opportunity of a lifetime, but the trope is that you have to seize it within the lifetime of the opportunity. So I went through the process of getting evaluated. You're allowed to put your name into this pool, and they kind of give you a draft grade, and you can decide whether or not you want to declare or return to school. And I got a late middle round draft grade, so rounds 4 through 6. Some of that exploration was out of concern that the new coaching staff might run a system that would hurt my draft stock, or not be people I want to play for. But with that evaluation from the NFL and meeting the new staff and liking them and being intrigued by their system, I decided to come back and try to improve my draft stock. So we switched defenses. I played a 4-3 for my first 4 years at Wisconsin. And in my 5th year, we switched to a 3-4, which was a challenge, but I saw it as an opportunity to show scouts that I could play a variety of different positions. Most NFL defenses run a 3-4 base, or at least half, and all teams have it in their repertoire. So it was a chance for me to learn, and wound up having a great senior year. First team All-American, Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, and a finalist for the Lott Trophy. So I think it was the right decision. I graduated from Wisconsin. I was a 2-time team captain. And that final year was a lot of fun. It's also kind of the year where agents and scouts you interact with a lot. So that's a unique process. College sports are our pro sports, but there's another level when it comes to the NFL. And it gets very real quickly when you're meeting with agents and talking about, strategies for going high in the draft, and the finances that are involved with it is millions of dollars, which isn't something that I'd seen in that up to that point in my life. So it was a thrill. It was also stressful. Trying to make these decisions and understand what's my best plan, who are the people that I want to work with. And it's very serious. I mean, teams, pour millions of dollars into you. They check, they know everything about you. They hire investigators to learn everything about you. The interview process is rigorous. And it's a year where you don't get any break. So, you play your senior season and then immediately start training for the combine and your pro day. And then I also played in the Senior Bowl. So it's really from January of your senior year through really for 2 straight years, it's like full bore forward. Have a great senior year, prepare for the draft. If you get drafted and play, it's not until your first NFL season's over that you get any break. But it was all thrilling. It's a lot of fun to, be peers with NFL clubs that you'd grown up admiring. And I got a lot of interest from a lot of different teams and had great meetings, and they'd come to Madison and work me out, or I would fly out to visit with the teams. And the whole pre-draft process is a little bit of a circus, but the payoff is a pretty incredible feeling.
Did you ever have that moment to where you said, I achieved my dream as a kid of playing professional? Was it when you were going to these pro days and all these scouts are talking they're going to draft you? Or is it the moment they said your name on the clock, or the moment you played your first game, ran out the tunnel? Or?
Yeah, I think the draft day is a special day. You're so laser focused during the process that, at least I didn't, I appreciated how cool it was, but it wasn't until you hear your name called that it really sinks in that you're an NFL athlete. And I had my whole family and a lot of friends. We had a draft day party, and it's just neat to see your name on the ticker, and they walk on stage and announce it, and you get called by the team and talk to everyone, and that was really, really special. A lot of people had invested a lot in me, and they were there and got to share in that moment with me. And then it happens very quickly. I forget why, but in 2014, rookie minicamp was sooner than it had been in the past. So I got drafted on a Saturday and flew out Sunday morning to start training with the team that week, and that was a amazing experience. It's kind of bizarre while you're watching the draft, because you could go at any minute, and that means you're going to pick up and move to Buffalo or Seattle or Kansas City or Houston, like who knows, in 2 days. But I wound up in San Francisco, and it was a great fit with the team. It was an exciting place to live. I had some friends and connections in the Bay Area, and it was really neat to meet all the other rookies in your draft class. And that's when it began to feel real, when your locker's next to Patrick Willis, and you're playing 7-on-7 against Kaepernick. It gets real very quickly, and it was thrilling.
Yeah. So you ended up getting drafted 3rd round to the 49ers, which is amazing. And then you ended up having a really good career a shortened career, one season, when Patrick Willis got injured, had 107 tackles, 2 interceptions, one being off Eli Manning, which I bet that was really, really cool. And then a forced fumble. And then you made the all-rookie team and Pro Bowl alternative. So you had immediate success. So what was the biggest difference between college and NFL? Because it doesn't seem there was a difference for you.
Yeah, I think I picked off Eli Manning twice.
My bad.
No. I'm just ribbing you a little bit. The pace of play is significantly faster than in college, and how precise you have to be is more important in the pros. It's not like guys get bigger or faster. They're about the same. I will say linemen seem to be much more athletic, but all the little things, all of the fundamentals that you've trained for however long are really stressed, because play basically is over once it starts. It's just bang bang. It's so fast that there's very little time to recover, and pros are so technically sound and proficient at all the nuances of the game. Veteran offensive lineman understands angles and leverage so well that you just can't, you really can't afford to make mistakes. And then I think another dramatic difference is quarterback play. Quarterback is such a hard position to play. There's so few truly talented quarterbacks in college that when you're playing against Peyton Manning or Drew Brees, they know more about football than anyone who's ever lived. And I was calling plays against them and trying to match wits as a rookie. So you just can't afford to be wrong. But all of that said, I feel like the jump between high school and college was bigger than the jump between college and pros. At Wisconsin, I played against NFL players every day and played against, NFL opponents, guys that would wind up in the NFL every weekend. So athletically, I felt prepared, but just upped my game a little bit, and did produce. We had a great system. I fit in just right, and it wasn't easy, but I think the jump from high school to college felt more significant to me than college to pro.
Gotcha. And then you ended up deciding to discontinue your NFL career after the 1 year due to repeated head injuries.
The issue of brain damage from football is something that had gained a lot of steam and more public attention kind of during the course of my career, from when I started as a freshman at Alter to when I got drafted. It was something I was aware of, but largely ignorant of. You hear stories of former players who struggled later in life. The first case was a Wisconsin alum, Mike Webster, first case of CTE. And kind of you knew vaguely about his story, but none of the specifics. Junior Seau took his life my junior year of college. And, that was the first time I remember having any real pause about, this is a hero of mine. This is a profession that I was considering joining that year, but joined the year after. And, one of the best players ever, shot himself in his chest so his brain would be preserved for study. But I think you're so committed and you've gone so far that you explain those things away or rationalize them. I thought, well, Junior played for 20 seasons and he, maybe used performance enhancing drugs or he's an outlier. So I kind of compartmentalized it or put it in the back of my mind and went about focusing on football. And in training camp, my rookie season, I got concussed. And then I just thought, I want a better idea of the outcomes. What is a run stuffing inside linebacker with a bad concussion history himself? What does he have in store if he plays for a decade, which was my goal. And so I just began reading what I could online about CTE and other neurodegenerative brain diseases. And it kind of gained steam. And throughout the year, just read more. And what I was finding was pretty damning. It wasn't just an instance of these guys like Junior Seau and Mike Webster, who played a long time, who had issues later in life. There were many men who played, very briefly or even stopped after college or even in some cases high school, that had CTE and other brain diseases. And so the more I looked into it, the more I thought I can't really justify playing a decade plus. I had a bad concussion in 8th grade, another one in 10th grade, and then played through a lot at Alter and at Wisconsin and with a few with the 49ers. So I began to actually reach out to people doing the research. My mindset had shifted from curiosity and in some way wanting to kind of disprove the hysteria around brain injury or justify my playing a long time, to being genuinely concerned and wanting to know more acutely what risk I'm at. And so I talk with researchers at Johns Hopkins and UCLA and Boston University and read all of their research. And all of this was going on while there was a NFL lawsuit. Thousands of former NFL players had sued the NFL for covering up the science around brain injury. And so that kind of also served as an actuary. If there's 20,000 living NFL alumni and 4,000 have claims of cognitive impairment, I play one of the most violent positions and have a bad injury history myself. So the outlook for me, I evaluated as pretty bleak. All of that said, I performed well and I was ready to take over one of the best defenses in the league. And if you play well for two or 3 years, they restructure your deal and you can make $60 million. But I'd known enough people, or I'd met enough people and learned enough stories where it doesn't matter if you have, $200 million if you have dementia at 40. So by the end of the season, I thought the most I would play is 3 years. That's when NFL players get their pension, so you get taken care of in retirement. But as the off season came and I thought about it more, I didn't want to have one foot in and one foot out. So I informed the 49ers in March that I was going to walk away from football.
Who was the hardest person to tell that you were walking away from football?
My brother Joe was a hard person to tell. He was an attorney in Dayton while I was in high school, and really took me under his wing training. When I got more serious about wanting to get a scholarship, he would lift with me 4 times a week for 2 hours, and made detailed workout programs and drove me to camps, and would reach out to coaches on my behalf. So I think probably my brother Joe. And I know, he and my brother John served in the military. And so while they were deployed, I know it was a great source of pride or distraction to watch me playing at Wisconsin. So Joe was the toughest. Everybody was hard to tell. And, being from a big family, you got to have the same conversation 9 times and everybody's got an opinion. But they were all understanding and supportive. And I think, those that mind don't matter, and those that matter don't mind.
Yeah. I have a couple of closing questions here. One of them, who's the best player you ever played against?
The best player I ever played against. There's many. Marshawn Lynch I think he might be the best running back ever, at least the hardest to bring down. Tyron Smith is a left tackle who was with the Cowboys at the time. He was tremendous. And then my very first start was against Peyton Manning, and it was the game he broke the all-time touchdown passing record. So he's underwhelming physically, but he just knows everything so well, and he puts the ball where it needs to be. He's kind of impossible to stop. So Marshawn, Tyron, and Peyton all come to mind.
Yeah, those are some stellar athletes. And then who was your biggest influence growing up?
And my biggest influence as an athlete, I'd say my brother Mark. He was, I really had a ton of admiration for him when he was in high school and college playing basketball. He was a smaller player, extremely skilled and scrappy, and a fierce competitor. And so I just emulated that all growing up and through high school, college, pro. He got everything out of his abilities and competed and led and, played with a lot of heart. So I think he had a huge impact on my athletic career.
And then your best advice you ever received?
The best advice, the one that comes to mind, it was my freshman year during training camp, and I was, playing with the starters and the backups and special teams. So I was, exhausted. I didn't know if I could, play linebacker at the college level. And Barry Alvarez, who was Wisconsin's coach, and he was the athletic director at the time, talked to the team after one training camp practice. And I was just like having these doubts. And it wasn't profound advice. I think it was just more timely. He said, guys, just all you have to do is never get discouraged and always try your best. And that stuck with me. I literally took that advice to heart and, applied it for the rest of camp and through my freshman season. No sense in getting discouraged. The most you can do is try your best. And whenever I had doubts or faced adversity, I would just remember what he said that day.
Yeah. Well, we're at 1 minute to go, so I appreciate taking your time out of your day to talk to me. That was really cool. I really appreciate it, especially a Dayton guy like you, and then watching you play. I was a little kid, but getting a chance to watch you play, and then my brother coming home saying, turn on the TV, this guy from Alta is playing for the 49ers. It was a surreal moment.
Well,
so I appreciate it.
Of course, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, and continued best with this. I think it's an awesome project what you have going on.